while markets are down and quieter, ourselves and other platforms have really used this period to build out their offering and become regulatory compliant. We're now registered with the securities commissions in every province and territory.
Hey folks, Flo here with CryptoNews Canada at the Canadian Blockchain Summit. I'm here with Pamela Draper of Bitvo. Why don't you give us a 1-minute introduction? Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, my name is Pamela Draper. I'm the CEO of a company called Pateno Payments. So Pateno Payments doesn't work specifically in the Bitcoin space, but what we do is we facilitate fiat payments via our technology to many different crypto companies as well as some online gaming companies. We work particularly well with the Canadian banking system to facilitate that transfer. And as you mentioned, Pateno owns Bitvo Inc. So Bitvo is a subsidiary of Pateno. I run both of those companies.
So what is Bitvo? Tell us a little bit more.
So Bitvo is a crypto asset trading platform. That's what we are told we need to be called by the regulators.
Okay.
But what people would typically think of it as an exchange. And what it really is like is it's similar to like a BMO investor line in terms of a platform where you can go on and trade assets, in our case digital assets. So we offer a wide variety of digital assets. Bitcoin would be the most easily understood example probably. And it's a platform for you to go on and buy, sell, trade, and potentially hold your cryptocurrencies.
Okay, very clear, very to the point. We appreciate that. We're trying to educate as well, so it's good to have a very clear explanation. You have obviously a unique vantage point on the investment market of crypto, so maybe you can speak a little bit to that. Everyone here has told us we're in the crypto winter. We know that, but what does that mean sort of for the coming months, the coming years, for those who are in it already or those who are considering?
Yeah.
I think the study from the Bank of Canada said a quarter of Canadians are planning to get into the market in 2023.
Yeah, I think the term crypto winter is interesting because I think you need to look at it from such a relative perspective. So our last crypto winter, and this is a crypto winter, I'm not arguing that, but the last crypto winter, which happened only a couple of years ago, we saw Bitcoin, for example, hit $6,000 per Bitcoin. Today, we currently sit at $19,000 per Bitcoin. So if you had bought in the last crypto winter, which was only 2 years ago, you'd be up 3 times on your money, and that's just for Bitcoin. But we did, after 6,000, hit highs of $70,000. So where we sit today is understandably depressed from that $70,000 level, but I think it's really important to think that Bitcoin has really only been around for 12, 13 years. So it has been quite volatile in that time frame, but over time you've seen it increase from cents to where it currently sits today at 19,000. I think that's important perspective to keep when you think about crypto winter and where we are and where we might be going.
We often hear the expression, when in doubt, zoom out, or it's all a question of time horizon. This sort of a cyclical nature and ultimately this growth trend, does that also remind people that this is a long-term kind of investment, this is a nascent industry? Is that important for people to be reminded of that?
I think nascent industry for sure. Long-term investment, I always encourage traders to think about any asset class, whether that's stocks, bonds, or crypto, in terms of their own personal situation. So depending on your own personal situation, you might be a day trader, in which case you're day trading the volatility. You might be a long-term holder and taking a long-term view. So
somewhere in between, a swing trader.
Somewhere in between. I think it's really important to think about the capital you've deployed into any different asset class and what your long-term goals are for that. And the other thing I would say about this crypto winter, which I think is interesting and different than prior crypto winters, is prior crypto winters have come decoupled from the stock market. So cryptocurrency prices might have been depressed when the stock market was otherwise banging and booming. In this time in particular, we are seeing a real kind of correlation to the stock market and seeing all risk assets in general being depressed together at one point in time. So I think it's interesting to at least think about that this isn't a crypto specific issue this time, whereas in prior times it definitely could have been an outlier or a standalone.
So people often talk about decoupling.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening in the coming months and years? Do you see crypto perhaps sort of, I mean, if I think about, for example, currencies right now, the US dollar is very strong. Every other currency, including the Canadian dollar, is not doing so good, basically trending down compared to the US dollar.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin is actually trending better than the US dollar, right? So do you see a decoupling between the crypto market and other industries happening in the coming years?
I think you should. So historically, crypto has not been correlated to the stock market. It has been uncorrelated to the stock market, which was an argument in support of cryptocurrency, saying, it's like a hedge, either an inflationary hedge or a stock market hedge, because it was so uncorrelated. And given that it has a fixed supply, it's not supposed to operate like fiat-backed money. It is supposed to operate in its own way. In the past 8 months, and particularly, we have not seen that. So we've seen it very correlated to the stock market, more so than it's ever been. And we've seen it very correlated in particular to tech or other high-risk assets, which again, you haven't historically seen that. And it's not the way it's intended to be used. It is intended to be used for the opposite. That was the premise of Bitcoin when they founded it. So I do think there's an opportunity in the future for it to again decouple the way it has operated historically and become more of that stock market or inflationary hedge.
Yeah. Short of getting into technical analysis, which I'm absolutely not a pro in, but I do watch content and read about it. Bitcoin, as one example, has been extremely stable actually over the last 3 months. Some say stabler than bonds, for example, which is kind of mind-boggling. I've also heard the term coiling up like a snake, right? So do you imagine that potentially in the coming, let's say, weeks and months or whatever time horizon, we're going to see, that kind of trending up again from that very, very unusually stable period?
It's very possible. In the world that we operate in today, I think anything is hard to predict. There's so much government intervention and shock announcements. The UK is a great recent example of this, where they put in place a new prime minister. She made specific announcements on their tax and budgetary regime that completely threw those markets and global markets into turmoil. So I think now in particular, versus other times historically, there's a lot of event-driven risk.
Okay.
Another example of that would be the US midterm elections, which are shortly upon us this fall. So I'd be hesitant to predict anything given the amount of event-driven risk at this market, but I think it's a good point that you highlight. Over the last 3 months, stock markets have been declining tremendously and have been incredibly volatile also based on these announcements. Crypto, and again, just using Bitcoin as a benchmark for crypto, has been relatively stable. So it's been hovering around that $20,000 per Bitcoin mark, where some days it's above 20,000, some days it's below 20,000, but it's really kind of oscillating or coiling, as I think you said, around that mark, whereas the broader markets have really kind of just been trending down throughout that period.
So here's our little 30 seconds educational question, and you've chosen to answer what the question is. What is the Web3 in 30 seconds or less?
So I chose this question because people ask me what is Web3 all the time, and I think the simplest definition of Web3 is to think about the migration of Web 1 to Web 3, because that's kind of really what made it make sense in my mind. So Web 1 is the internet. It's just the plain basic internet that they developed in the late 80s, early 90s, from dial-up. Web 2 is when we started getting platforms like Wikipedia and Facebook. It's content driven by the user web internet.
And multimedia too.
And multimedia. So the content that's there is not posted by the individual websites, but by the people or the users who use those websites. Web 3 is one step further, where you get complete decentralization of both the internet as well as the content that's there. So anyone can go on, use it, and create in that space versus relying on a centralized platform.
Okay, very clear, and probably just about 30 seconds. We're not measuring, but you did very well. Now, if we zoom out, since that's a term in the industry, and we look at the Canadian, perhaps a little bit on the Albertan, and the global crypto market, what are your thoughts, and what are some of the, let's say, macro, elements that you track in order to manage your business and perhaps your own investments? What are people, what should people really be looking at?
Well, I think right now we're kind of in a wait and see phase, because the markets have been quite tumultuous. So people are sort of waiting to see if there's some stability to be gained throughout fall and get some of this event-driven risk behind us. But I think what we see specifically in the crypto side, if I start in Canada, throughout this crypto winter, there's been a lot of development and a lot of incoming regulation that I think ultimately will be beneficial to the entire crypto ecosystem. So while markets are down and quieter, ourselves and other platforms have really used this period to build out their offering and become regulatory compliant. We're now registered with the securities commissions in every province and territory. We've been registered with FinTrack, Canada's anti-money laundering agency, for 2+ years now. So I think from a platform perspective, we're really using this quieter time to really get ready to take advantage of that next uptick when it happens. Yeah. And not only traditional platforms like ourselves, but I think DeFi applications globally are using this time to build so that when the markets do come back, and we believe that they will, everyone's in a much better position to really kind of truly take advantage of that and cognizant of pushing the industry forward while markets are in more bear market territory.
Yeah. Anything you want to say about Alberta specifically? I mean, you're based here in Calgary, and Binance is here as well. So there's so much activity. The Canadian Blockchain Consortium, which I call the de facto Canadian National Association for blockchain, is here as well. Why is that all happening here?
People ask me that all the time, or why we founded our business here. Alberta has so much to offer to companies, particularly small and growing companies. So the government here really recognizes and supports the oil industry, of course, but they also really recognize the need to differentiate the economy away from the oil industry and support other types of businesses.
And there are some synergies too, by the way, between the two, right?
Absolutely, from a mining perspective, definitely. So there's grants, government grants and support for sure, but also if you compare Alberta and Calgary in particular to other major centers in Canada like Vancouver or Toronto, it is far less expensive to grow a business here. Everything from office space to the cost of labor to the tax regime that the government has put in place, all of that is less of a burden in Calgary than it is in other major centers. So it really is helpful when you're in those startup phase and trying to squeeze the most out of every single penny.
Yeah, and of course you now have a Bitcoiner premier.
We do. So Bitvo was happy to support the crypto donations for Danielle Smith, who became our new premier. So Bitcoin actually personally facilitated that acceptance of Bitcoin and conversion into Canadian dollars on behalf of Danielle and her team, and we're so excited to do that. She's the first politician to have that in her campaign, from what I understand.
And for me, a little shameless plug, but I was asked at the last minute to moderate a panel at the Alberta Tech Symposium in April because someone got sick actually with COVID, and it was Danielle who introduced me and who introduced the panel. So it's pretty cool to think that she's the premier now. Final thoughts, what's uniquely Canadian in crypto, or what's unique in the crypto market here in Canada?
Two things, and they're maybe superficial. So Canada was obviously the birthplace of Ethereum. Ethereum and Vitalik developed Ethereum right here in Waterloo in Ontario in Canada. But also CZ, the global head of Binance, has a Canadian passport.
Any final message? Is there anything you like to take every opportunity you have to share with a Canadian audience, with folks who might be crypto curious or even skeptic? What is something that you really like to share?
Education, from the crypto curious to crypto skeptic. I'd just say educate yourself one way or the other. In order to be able to have an informed view, you have to go online and do the research and figure out those trusted sources. And shameless plug for Bitvo, because we believe so passionately that education and quality education in this space is so important. We've developed a place on our website under education where we have a lot of blogs and content that will educate anyone from the layman crypto user to the advanced crypto trader. So check it out, but also use it as part of the additional research and education that you do to think about the space.
That's great, and we'll link to your personal Twitter and other accounts in the bio. And by the way, this educational aspiration might create opportunities for collaboration. This is Flo here with CryptoNews Canada. Thank you very much. Pamela Draper with Pateno Payments as well as Bitvo here at the Canadian Blockchain Consortium. Thank you for watching, and make sure you watch the other videos. Cheerio.
Thank you.